What's up, y'all? TBrown31 here with JaboctheGreat. Welcome back to The Last Word. We got our weekend picks for Week 8 and Week 7 in college football and the NFL. As always, we're going to start in college football. Got some big matchups in the SEC this week. Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas. We're going to start with Bama, Tennessee. As we've chronicled over the past couple of weeks, both these teams have had, a rough 2 weeks in a row, narrowly defeating 3-3 teams just last week, and of course losing their first games of the season the week before that to unranked teams. So in this one, I'm gonna go with Alabama. I spent a lot of time criticizing Alabama the last couple weeks, but Tennessee has probably been the only other top tier team that's kind of looked worse than them. They were a lot closer to losing to Florida than Bama was to South Carolina, despite how close Alabama was to losing that one. Tennessee was down 10-0 into the third. And Alabama, I think, for them, they just got to eliminate, at least from last game, the stupid turnovers. I mean, Milroe, as great as he plays sometimes, like those turnovers were bad. And Tennessee, their defense, they still got a defense that can play, but the offense is just not cutting it right now. So I would go with Bama to fully bounce back in this one.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how similar these two teams have had for the last 2 weeks. I've thought about it as we've covered these two teams for the past 2 weeks, but this one is really huh, it has been the
Yeah.
exact same pathway. The only thing for me here is that Alabama has looked, I think, a little better in their losses. Right, they still put up 35 against Vanderbilt, which that sounds kind of crazy. It makes it sound like Vanderbilt has a crazy defense, but that wasn't a they did as Terrence and I covered in that game. They didn't really lose because they played bad. They just lost because Vanderbilt won a little more. Um, South Carolina is a little different, right? They come out make a lot of mistakes. South Carolina catches them on them, make a lot of defensive mistakes that South Carolina is able to catch them on. They allow an offside kick. For me, Tennessee has not really looked alive in their last two games, right? They put up 14 points against Arkansas, lost 19-14. Not really good by any means for college football, especially. Turn around and go into overtime with Florida at 17-17 and walk it off, 23-17. I just think that we're not seeing as much from Tennessee. Alabama has higher peaks for sure. As much as I think, as a hater, I would prefer Tennessee to win this one. It just feels like they're a little more prone to messing up. Their defense might be pretty good, but the offense has a higher chance of not getting kind of cranked up here. And I think that with that in mind, Alabama will probably bounce back in full swing, as you said, and take this game. Big SEC win. Both these teams need it. It's kind of funny to look at the SEC standings and see both of these two teams right under Arkansas and Vanderbilt. Would not have expected that at the beginning of the season, but it's been a year for sure. Going from there, we're going to move to Georgia and Texas. This is a big one, right? A few weeks ago, or maybe many weeks ago now, this was a 1 versus 2 matchup, however way you put it. Now it's a 1 versus 5. Texas has rolled on, ended up being 6-0. They have dismantled OU. They took care of Mississippi State, took care of everyone else that's been on their schedule as well. Probably the most impressive win is going to be that Michigan one that we've covered. Georgia hit a little bit of a snag against Alabama, lost 41-34. Struggled with Kentucky as we covered. Did not struggle with Auburn. Put them to bed. That one was fine. Came out and had a bit of a duel with Mississippi State, but I think Georgia was pretty firmly in control if you really were watching. But with that in mind, I think the Texas Longhorns are going to stay on top. They're going to get Quinn Ewers in this game. They had him in the last one. Quinn Ewers certainly could have been a Heisman candidate had he played the whole season. No way he'll get it now, but that's not really on him. He looks really, really good. If, by any means something happens, Arch Manning comes in, he's also looked really, really good. I think Texas has had a great offense. Their offense has rolled. They have not had offensive struggles really in any game of this season. And their defense has also been pretty dominant throughout the entire season. Georgia can be super, super dominant on both ends of the ball, and they can really, really slip up and allow a lot of points on defense. We saw in the Kentucky game they can struggle to score points. Even in the first half of the Clemson game, they can struggle. I think this one will be good. I know a lot of people think that Georgia is going to show why they should be higher up there. I think Texas is going to continue to roll. Probably won't blow out Georgia. We could see a 41-31 in Texas' favor in this one. But I do think Texas' offense and defense just a little better. Quinn Ewers has been really, really good this year. I don't expect that to get slowed down too much by Georgia, despite how good that defense is. So, taking everything into account on the way these seasons have gone, I'm going to go with the Texas Longhorns to improve to 7-0, and surprisingly, drop the Georgia Bulldogs to 5-2.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be the best 5-2 team we've seen in a long time. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be like. I'd say this is going to be closer than Bama, Tennessee. Um, Texas last week. It's not like they started off all that great. It was just late in the second quarter. They got a couple Oklahoma turnovers back to back, and they went from 7-0 to 21-0, just like that, or 21-3. I can't remember exactly. But Georgia, my main issue with them is kind of what you said. Like they just haven't played a full, complete Georgia Bulldogs game that we're used to. Um, I mean, even going back to Clemson, like that was slow. Then they came on in the second half. A lot of these games start slow, come on in the second half, show up. Obviously the Alabama game, Mississippi State was kind of the opposite for once. They came out early and did pretty well, and then like, Mississippi State, outscoring later. But I think Georgia definitely has a better path to beat Texas than Tennessee does Bama. This pick is just more about Texas to me. Like right now, I still stand behind it. They're the best team in college football. They deserve that number 1 spot. Definitely the best team in the SEC. But I think this will definitely be close. If Georgia comes out strong early on, I think that is their best chance to beat them. Because I think they can't turn the ball over like they had in some of these games. Obviously, the Bama game, Carson Beck with all those interceptions can't happen. Because Texas is that type of team. Like we saw in Oklahoma game, you give them turnovers, they're going to capitalize off of that. So if they can keep it clean and play a complete game, I think Georgia can win. But I still think right now Texas overall the better team. I think they'll be able to pull it out. Moving on to the NFL, we got a couple games here, 3 actually. We're going to start with the NFC North matchup, and we're actually going to split on this one. So we're going with Lions Vikings. He's going to pick the Vikings. I'm going with the Lions. Now, this isn't a knee jerk reaction from the Cowboys game. I mean, we've seen the Cowboys get beat up a couple times this season. So, I mean, it happens literally every other game. Everybody basically gets a turn with them. So I'm not going to act like that is the reason why I'm picking them. But in the last couple games, the Lions have been really good on offense. We've finally seen that Detroit Lions team that we've been expecting all season. Now we're 6-7 weeks into the season at this point. And for me, I talked to you about this before. Like the Vikings, as great as that defense was against the Jets, team overall, that offense was kind of shaky. Sam Darnold wasn't amazing in that game against the Jets over in London. And, I know obviously that game got Robert Saleh fired. Next game they brought in Devontae Adams, of course. But that was just easily a game that the Vikings could have lost if your Hall of Fame QB for the Jets doesn't throw 3 interceptions, especially when to end the game. So, I mean, if Aaron Rodgers at least looks halfway better than he did, Vikings wouldn't be undefeated. So, I think the Lions right now, they're a hotter team. I understand the Vikings are undefeated, but I think we did see a little bit of the cracks there on that offense. Whereas right now, I don't think there'll be any cracks with the Lions on offense, so I'll be picking with them.
Yeah, I think it would be easy for me to sit here and go, "Well, the Vikings are 5-0. They're gonna they're gonna stay undefeated and move on." It's you can't really discuss this game without discussing. I think the complexities of the Vikings' last 2 games. Right, they just had a bye week, so that's gonna change some things as well. But they almost lose to Green Bay. They try their best to throw that one away,
Oh,
but
true.
they stayed in. And then in the New York game, it's the same kind of thing where like you could easily lose this one if your defense doesn't pop in and snag 3 picks. Questionable on how much of it's the defense. Some of it is Aaron tossed them up there um, in that game in London. So I definitely think that the Vikings are a little more set up to crack here. Right, the Lions have rolled. They took that bad loss to Tampa Bay. Not like bad, they didn't get blown out. Right, but they started the season, with a 26-20 victory in overtime over the Rams, who now look horrible. Um, and then got that win, or then took that loss to the Bucks, who've been pretty decent. But they came back, have taken care of business with the Cardinals, Seahawks, and Cowboys since, especially the Seahawks and Cowboys. They put those two to rest pretty easily on those games. So it definitely looks, like the Lions are ready to go. I could see this game. For me, I think no matter how good this Vikings defense is, there's going to be somewhat high scoring by NFL standards. I just think that Vikings offense has been pretty solid. It was not amazing against the Jets, but I don't think the Lions quite have the defense that the Jets do. Not that the Lions defense is bad, but Aiden Hutchinson not being there is going to be a tough one for me to completely look by, and he's not the only good defender on that team. But I think with his absence, I think the Vikings are going to be able to maybe have a little more comfort for Sam Darnold to get the ball down to Justin Jefferson. If Aaron Jones plays, that could be big. I think the Lions' running game is certainly going to be better than the Vikings' running game, despite the fact that Cam Akers has returned. So we'll see how that goes. That was a football move. I don't entirely know what goes on with that one. Also, T.J. Hawkinson could return in this game, but that would not mean too much to me because he's been out for so long. I wouldn't be ready to call him an X factor immediately returning to the field. I think this one's going to be a great divisional, gritty game. Vikings defense, to me, I think can maybe catch Dan Campbell slipping on one of those crazy plays and kind of edge out a narrow victory here, despite the Lions rolling. I do think that the Lions won't look too much like Aiden Hutchinson is in there. I think they'll lock in. I think they'll be gritty. I think this is a team that comes together around us guys, and I think that the Vikings will win this one in a generally like a 28-27, super narrow fashion. So yeah, not going to take them by too much. Vikings are a great team. They deserve to be 5-0, but have definitely showed more cracks than the Lions. I just think that they'll edge this one out. Going over here, I thought maybe we were making a controversial pick here, but the professional gamblers would say that we're in the majority. Um, we're going to move to a big matchup. This is a great weekend of football. These are the kind of Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, and then Kansas City, San Francisco, even Vikings and Lions. These are games that you look forward to as a football fan, and to get them all in 1 week, that's just great. We are going to take the 49ers against the Chiefs here, the 3-3 49ers to take down the Kansas City Chiefs 5-0, coming off of a bye week. We haven't discussed the Chiefs that much this year. We previewed their game against the Bengals, and that went 26-25. We also haven't really discussed the 49ers because they're 3-3 and they haven't done a whole lot that is super impressive. Their wins have been good. Their losses have been weird. That's that's kind of as much as you could chalk it up to. I think that the Niners are kind of on the right track, which is kind of weird to say since they just lost the Cardinals. But that game, they gave it to them. And obviously, if they make those kind of mistakes against the Chiefs, you lose for sure, 100% of the time. But I think the 49ers defense is gonna be a massive thing here. They have a fully healthy and ready to go George Kittle under their belt. Kind of Kittle every week is a little bit questionable, but I think they finally got him. Juwan Jennings should be all right. Jordan Mason being questionable is a little tough, but I think he will also be okay. To me, I think that, and we haven't had a lot of time to talk about these two teams, so I'm just gonna put it all on the table right now. I am not really impressed by either of them, but I am certainly not impressed with any of the 5 of the Chiefs games. Right? We talked about the Ravens game. They get it out at the end. Lamar makes a few mistakes. That game goes to the Chiefs. They get the Bengals by a point. They kind of rob the Falcons for sure on that missed call. They struggle against the Chargers to get a 17-10 victory, and then they, I guess, somewhat convincingly 26-13 beat the Saints. But the Saints are certainly not the Saints from the first week, regardless of the kind of fall off of what the Saints were doing in the first 2 weeks. They also have lost every player in their locker room. So, and I don't mean like in a chemistry way. The Saints roster is essentially all on IR or something. So the Chiefs, to me, have had not really that great of an offense. Their defense has been good. They've kept most of their opponents pretty low scoring. But I think the Niners are going to have much more of a chance of getting around that, even in their losses. I think the lowest they've scored is 17, right? So they've still put up 24, 30, 23, 36. I think this is a team that's going to be able to overrun that Kansas City defense. And I'm not super impressed by either of these two teams. I don't want to sound like I'm glazing the Niners, but I'm just really not impressed with the Chiefs this year. I've said it many times on the show that sometimes I can be a professional hater, so I get it. But the Chiefs, to me, they're 5-0. I would like to be able to say that they're a convincing 5-0, and I have to just kind of eat the fact that we're watching a generational team be 5-0. But this isn't really like the Chiefs of old that dueled the Jared Goff Rams. This is a Chiefs team that seems to like struggle and questionably get its way to each victory every week. And I'm not really down with it, and I'm not really impressed by it. I think they'll take their first loss here. The regular season 49ers are certainly a bigger threat than the Super Bowl 49ers to this Chiefs team. And I think that they'll catch them slipping here, drop them to 5-1, finally get themselves into the positive column.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Chiefs are, like you said, probably coming off their most impressive win of the season so far. I think the Chiefs of old, like that we got used to, obviously, before Tyreek got traded and everything, like those Chiefs are done. Like they're gonna play these closer games more often. Um, Unfortunately, some are gonna be decided by penalties at the end. Um, but yeah, they're priding themselves a lot more in their defense as of late, the last couple of years, especially the last two Super Bowl championship wins. Um, so yeah, I think this is kind of like what I said with the Texas Georgia game. It's less about Georgia, it's more about Texas. I think this is more about the Niners and the Chiefs. Um, of course, the Chiefs have a ton of injuries at the receiver position, like you mentioned with New Orleans there. So they've Juju Smith-Schuster. He's possibly going to be out. He's questionable for this one. Obviously, Hollywood Brown was already out. Rasheed Rice was out as of a couple weeks ago. So they've got issues at the receiver spots because Xavier Worthy's going to have to put in a lot of work. The guy out of Texas. So I think the Niners. It's more about them just kind of getting their footing together this season. Excuse me. Starting to get a little bit more momentum. Win against Seattle on Thursday Night Football, like you mentioned, the Arizona loss was just a bad loss. They gave it away. Made mistakes. Obviously, not having being able to kick later in the game was a problem because they had a huge win against New England, which I mean, I guess New England's not really impressive anymore anyway. But outside of Week 1 against the Bengals, so yeah, I think it's just more of I think the Niners are going to kind of they have to start somewhere. I mean, because they're still only 3-3. It's not like that division is you know there's no 4-1, 5-1, 5-0 team in their division. Their division is kind of all packed together. So they have to start somewhere if they do intend to still be that same team, even without Christian McCaffrey. And we've seen, with Mason out there, like they can still run the ball effectively. So yeah, I would still go with the 49ers in this one. Definitely, I would say it's still going to be close. That Chiefs defense will still make it a game, but I think it's going to be a slight win for the Niners. Moving into our last game, though, we got the Ravens and the Buccaneers. This is going to be a pretty good matchup, kind of underrated here. Both teams 4-2. Obviously, the Ravens have won their last 4 games in a row. Bucks, on the other hand, have alternated wins and losses for the past 4 weeks. I'm not really sure what to say about the Bucks anymore. They had this weird loss against Denver. I mean, they did nothing. Come out have a pretty good first half against the Eagles, then kind of let up to get a good win. Losing OT to Atlanta, and then at some point against New Orleans, I'm not sure when this happened, but they went from being up like 10 points to winning 51-27. So I'm not exactly who the Tampa Bay Bucks are right now. My main problem with this game, we're both going to pick the Ravens, but my main problem with this one, again, Ravens secondary. Now they didn't get completely torched last week like they did against Cincinnati, but Baker Mayfield, he's been playing really well. Chris Godwin's been playing pretty well. Mike Evans is questionable, so that might be an issue if he's out. But I still think, like I said last week, Ravens offense is just going to be better in this one coming out. And to be honest, I feel like the Bucks, even if they lose this game, I think they'll still look pretty good. And at this point, I think they'll still win the division. That Atlanta loss wasn't that big of a deal. So I think even with a loss here, they'll be fine. At the end of the day, the Ravens to me are just a better team, and I'm sure you'll probably agree with that.
Yeah, I think consistently, like the Ravens are just a bit better on defense, a little bit better on offense. They stay hotter. A little less mistake prone, which is crazy to think about their first few weeks of football here. Um, but I do have to agree. I mean, when you look at these teams, the Ravens do have the ability to make sure that whoever they beat doesn't look bad, right? I mean, like they've played good offenses for one. So I mean, the Bengals offense is great. They still put up 38 points. The Commanders offense was at the time when they played, I think first or second. The Ravens were first or
Yeah,
second, and the Commanders were the other one. So
yeah,
when they played each other, and they still looked good, right? It was a 30-23 game. There wasn't many points for like the Washingtons. The Commanders were completely out of it. Kind of the same with the Bucks, right? The Saints fought hard. Spencer Rattler came out, put them to the test. They did not really let the Eagles get in there, but the Eagles were dealing with a lot of injuries. I think it was a good win by the Bucks, but that is what it is. They fought the Lions the whole time. The only team to really make either of these two teams look bad is somehow the Denver Broncos, who beat the Bucks 26-7. Never understand that one. Similarly to you, I stopped paying attention to this game at a certain point because I was like, this is a good game, but I want to see what happens in this Washington Ravens game. I look back and it's 51-27. It was like 34-27 or something like that. I don't really know what happened there. These two teams are good. These two teams have flashes to score a whole bunch of points. They also allow a lot of points. Right? New Orleans puts up 27 against the Bucks. Atlanta goes to overtime, puts up 36. Otherwise, the Bucks defense was pretty solid, but their last two opponents kind of got the edge on them, and it is, I think, not a very hot take to say the Ravens are better than the Falcons and Saints. In that same vein, I think the Bucks are a little more complete than the Bengals, a little more complete than the Commanders. I think this is a really good Monday night game. As I said, I think we got a pretty solid week of football aside from the game happening tonight. I don't know what the Saints hospital room and Bo Nix and the Broncos would do, but that's not important. For me, I'm going to take the Ravens in this game. They're a little more consistent, but I don't expect the Bucks to look bad. I don't expect this to be the Denver Broncos game. I could really easily see, like a 38-35, or even to steal one of their old scores, 36 or maybe 37-30 if it doesn't go to overtime, like 30-23. Any of these games, I think these two teams are gonna have a shootout with each other. Lamar and Baker Mayfield are both up in that MVP conversation. This is going to be a great Monday night game to really put that to the test, especially coming in with the same record. It's all on the table for this one. I think this one will be super fun, but I do think the Ravens will take it, really take control of that division. I mean, they could still end up being tied with the Steelers at the end of the week, but I think they'll kind of firmly cement themselves in the driver's seat, and the Bucks won't have too much to panic about, but have a little bit more work to do to reclaim the NFC South after this one. But that's really just a fight between them and the Falcons.